Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our unit on food today.
Oh, yum.
And it's also our all-English lecture, which is going to be kind of hard to do because we're actually talking about Cantonese cuisine. And at some point in our lesson, we are going to mention some of the names of these dishes. Unfortunately, they have Cantonese names. So if I say the Cantonese names, then they're technically not English. Then somebody's going to come here and punish me.
No.
What am I supposed to do?
No, you will not be punished as long as you stick to the script. But I don't know how to speak Cantonese, and so my pronunciation of some of these dishes will be weird. I know.
Yeah, well, we just say it the way we say it in English, okay? We don't speak actually any Cantonese.
Yeah, but I don't know how some of these are said even in quote-unquote English.
Well, you just use the rules of English pronunciation, and you should be doing a pretty good job there. Although maybe at some point or another, I might, send a text message to our recording engineer here to tell me exactly how you pronounce these things. But in any case, there are various kinds of dishes in Cantonese cuisine, which is the cooking of Guangdong province in China, and it's mostly famous in Hong Kong and Chinatowns all over the world. So,
especially Chinatown.
You bet. So that's kind of the first introduction a lot of foreigners have to Chinese food. They think Chinese food is Cantonese food because that's basically the first place they learned about it.
American Cantonese food.
Yes, there is a difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference because when I went to Hong Kong, I discovered that what I'd been eating in America wasn't exactly the same. No.
That's right. So in any case, I'm going to dispel with the one phrase in Cantonese that I know.
What is that?
I think I said that all wrong, but what do you want to eat? We'll find out what we want to eat right now by listening to the entire contents of our lesson right now. Glistening hunks of roasted meat dangle from metal hooks behind a glass window. A man uses a cleaver to slice up crispy cuts of pork belly and lays them over a bed of rice. Nearby, flat rice noodles, onions, beef, and bean sprouts are tossed around in a fiery wok. In a restaurant next door, a cart full of dim sum is pushed around. The lids of bamboo steamer baskets are lifted one by one as customers take a peek at what's inside. The sights and smells of siu yuk, chow fun, and dim sum always delight patrons of Cantonese restaurants. The prominence of Cantonese cuisine outside China can be attributed to the fact that Guangdong was the first region in China to open its doors to the world. Later, when Guangdong residents migrated around the globe, they brought their culinary talents with them, making Cantonese food the world's first introduction to Chinese food. Fresh ingredients prepared using cooking techniques such as stir-frying, steaming, braising, deep frying, and roasting are the features of Cantonese cooking. Spices are used sparingly to preserve the food's original flavor, which is why Cantonese pantries are almost free of seasonings. On the other hand, ginger, garlic, and scallions are liberally used to enhance the flavor of the ingredients. This culinary approach releases the natural flavors that people have come to love about Cantonese cuisine. Popular dishes such as shumai, a pleated, open-topped dumpling stuffed with pork and shrimp, and har gao, a translucent dumpling containing 2 whole prawns, are synonymous with Cantonese cuisine. These, along with pineapple buns and clay pot rice, are beloved fare at Cantonese restaurants. It goes without saying that people around the world will continue to take delight in these and other culinary favorites from Guangdong.
Well, one of my very favorite units of all to teach is the food unit.
Food. Yes, we are talking about food, and specifically we're talking about a kind of Chinese food called Cantonese cuisine, which you can find here in Taiwan. There are different kinds of restaurants that serve Cantonese food in various places.
Yeah, and they'll have on there that it's usually, I've seen in the Chinese, it'll say Hong Kong style. and that's Cantonese style. Cuisine is a type of cooking. It's a style of cooking. Usually it belongs to a particular country or ethnic group. So it's a characteristic of a type of cooking from a country, like I said, or a group. Here we're talking about Cantonese cuisine. And of course, there is the area of Canton in China, which we call Guangdong in our article, which is correct. But they also have Cantonese cooking in Hong Kong. So I was kind of surprised when I first went to Hong Kong and had some food in the restaurants there. I expected it to taste like the Chinese food I'd grown up with, but it's different.
Indeed, it's different, and I'm sure the Cantonese food that you find here in Taiwan is not the same as the Cantonese food that you would find in Hong Kong.
Unless those people come from Hong Kong, which I was referring to a restaurant in my neighborhood. They're actually from Hong Kong.
And when you go in there, they're speaking in Cantonese, and you can't understand, and you think, hey, why are you guys having an argument? No, we're just chatting, we're not arguing. But in any case here, we're going to talk about why the world loves Cantonese food, or Cantonese cuisine. Cuisine is just fancy food, basically. And here is a way you might describe a Cantonese restaurant. It says you've got glistening hunks of roasted meat, and they dangle from metal hooks behind a glass window. If something glistens, it kind of shimmers, it kind of gives off light, it's kind of shiny, so it reflects that light. You've got this roasted meat dangling from hooks in a glass window. If you dangle something, that means something just kind of hanging in the air, maybe swinging back and forth. A little bit.
Oh, yeah, you see that a lot, don't you? Usually they're chickens or ducks sometimes. Here we're talking about some pork. Here we're continuing on with this situation, or what you're seeing here. It's a man using something called a cleaver to slice up crispy cuts of pork belly, and then he lays them over a bed of rice. So a cleaver is a really large knife, you could say. It's got a very large blade, and it looks scary to me, and it looks like you could easily chop off your thumb or finger if you aren't careful. So they use these big cleavers to slice up crispy cuts of pork belly. The reason why they use those cleavers too is because they can cut through bone, and bone is quite tough to cut through with just a regular knife, like a steak knife. We're using that wonderful imagery of a bed of rice. You don't have to say that. You could just say he lays them over some rice. But a bed of rice is just a way to describe a big, large amount of rice. Rice is non-count. So you can't say he lays them over some rices or some pieces of rice. That would be weird too. It's just a big clump or a bed of rice, which sounds more beautiful.
Like a layer of rice. The rice is at the bottom. The food is on top. And then nearby that, we've got some flat rice noodles. These are noodles made from rice, and they're flat. We've also got onions, we've got beef, and we've got bean sprouts. They're tossed around in a fiery wok, I guess you could say. They're doing some stir-frying there. Sprout here is just something that grows out of something. So you've got beans, and then something starts growing out of that. That would be a bean sprout. Sometimes garlic has sprouts if you let it sit around too long, or onions sometimes have sprouts as well. And in a restaurant next door, a cart is full of dim sum that is being pushed around. Okay, so you've got some stir-fry going in a wok in one restaurant, and then in the restaurant next door, I guess you've changed the sort of style here. This is a dim sum restaurant. Dim sum sounds a lot like the word in Mandarin. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm not supposed to speak any language other than English today.
Little snacks.
Little snacks, basically. They are in these little bamboo steamer baskets. So those lids of those bamboo steamer baskets are lifted one by one as customers take a peek. They kind of look inside for a short second, and they want to see, ooh, let's see what's in there. Let me have a peek at that. So yes, these are bamboo steamer baskets. A steamer has to do with steam. The moisture that comes off of water when it's boiled is really hot, and it can be used for cooking things. In those little bamboo steamers, you can put buns and stuff in there, or dumplings.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to buy myself a steamer, actually. If you take a quick look, it's a peek, and it's kind of fun to see what's inside those bamboo steamers. I really love that style of cooking.
Me too.
Now, the sights and smells of different dishes called xiu yuk, chow fun, and dim sum are always a delight to patrons who come to these Cantonese restaurants. If you're a patron of a restaurant, typically it means you go there pretty regularly. So there's someone that the owners would recognize as you walk in the door. A lot of the little restaurants or little places that prepare and sell food in my neighborhood know that I am a loyal patron. I go there quite frequently to buy some of their food. And it's fun to see what the food looks like, and it's got a wonderful smell. So we often use that phrase, the sights and smells of something, when it looks and smells good at the same time.
Okay, so that's what would greet a patron or a customer at a Cantonese restaurant. Now, let's move on to the next paragraph here. It says, the prominence of Cantonese cuisine outside China can be attributed to the fact that Guangdong was the first region in China to open its doors to the world. So we're talking about the prominence of Cantonese cuisine outside of China. Prominence here just means the popularity or the fact that there's a lot of something in these places, maybe more than there should be. So we've got the prominence of Cantonese cuisine. They're kind of the majority of Chinese food outside of China, even though they are not the majority population in China. So why is that? Well, this can be attributed to, or it can be explained by, the fact that Guangdong was the first region in China to open its doors to the world. That's where the Westerners came in, and the Cantonese people spread out from there. So that's why they have such a big influence on the rest of the world.
I think it has a lot more to do, though, with Hong Kong than it does with Guangdong, because we've had Cantonese food long before that area of China opened up to the West. But it's kind of fun to be able to taste some of what the cooking tastes like in southern China there. Now, later, it says when Guangdong residents, people who live in a place or residents, like Tom and I are both residents of Taiwan. We're not citizens of Taiwan. We aren't allowed to vote. We don't have Taiwanese citizenship. But we live here, so we can be considered as residents. If you migrate, you move around from your country to another country, not just from city to city. That's not migration. You're actually going to a different country. A lot of animals migrate based on the seasons. Maybe you've got birds who prefer warm weather. So when the winter comes, they'll all fly in a big flock to a nice toasty area of the world.
Exactly. And migrating here again means that they've spread all over the place. And where have they gone? They've gone to the U.S., they've gone to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. So indeed, residents of Guangdong have spread all over the place. And of course, they're not just going to settle in those countries and settle for hamburgers or pizza or things like that.
No, they miss home.
Indeed. So they brought their culinary talents with them. Culinary just has to do with cooking, your culinary skills, your cooking skills. So they brought those culinary talents with them. They brought their walks with them. And that has made Cantonese food the world's first introduction to Chinese food. So, and not just the food, also the language too, because a lot of people outside of China think that Chinese is Cantonese, so if you say you speak Chinese, they expect you to sound like you're from Hong Kong. And, it's, kind of debatable, but Cantonese is probably not the best sounding form of Chinese. So, yeah, it's probably not the best impression to give the rest of the world. You'd rather have them speaking something like Taiwanese or Mandarin or maybe Shanghai or something like that. But in any case, that is subject to debate. But again, we're talking about the food here, and I think most people think that Cantonese food is very tasty. We'll continue talking about this very fascinating subject in just a couple of seconds. Let's take a break right now.
Welcome back, guys. As you know, there's no Chinese teacher today, so it's just us. We'll try to speak a little bit more slowly and try to use some words that you don't know, but explain them well enough that you'll become familiar with what they mean. Now, we're going to talk about some of the ingredients that they use in Cantonese food. Some of their ingredients is scary to me, Tom, like they like to eat dog and monkey brain, which is kind of scary to me. Now, when you talk about ingredients and you're a chef or maybe you're just a cook who enjoys making dishes for your family and friends, you need to buy things at the supermarket or a traditional market called ingredients. It could be your meat, your vegetables, your spices. Maybe you have some herbs you want to use. Those are your ingredients. And then you have to decide how you want to cook your food. So there are different techniques. They use stir frying.
Right, you would use a wok for that over a high flame with a kind of tool and oil and stuff like that. You can also steam it, which is what you would use the bamboo steamers for.
Yeah.
There are other ways to steam as well, but that's a pretty common one. We've also got braising here. I'm not quite sure myself what braising is, but I guess the definition is you just kind of stew it a little bit.
Well, you cook the meat for a long time in liquid, and that liquid usually has spices that get into the meat, and it makes it taste really yummy. So it's like a stew for us.
Kind of slow cooking, basically, stewing it. Deep frying, of course, you got the oil, and you just dip the food inside that oil like you do with French fries. And also you've got roasting, which is basically cooking it inside an oven, right?
It sure is. Now, if you deep fry, you don't just dip it. You put that whole thing inside the oil and let it cook for a while. It's kind of fattening, but it's tasty. Yeah, very tasty.
So these are some different sorts of techniques that are used in Cantonese cooking along with those ingredients. But here's the feature here. Spices are used sparingly to preserve the food's original flavor. So I guess some people would say that Cantonese food might be kind of boring because they don't use a lot of spices. The spices are used sparingly. Something is used sparingly when you don't really use it that much. You're very economical with it. You're moderate. You just use a little bit because you want the taste of the food to be the main feature and not the spices so much.
One of the things we try to preserve is the ethnic culture and traditions that we have in families even. We want to preserve our traditions, keep them going forever. If you preserve food, you just want to make sure it doesn't change too much, maintain its original state. You want to taste the flavor if the food is really fresh, right? So they don't like to use a lot of spices, which is why Cantonese pantries are almost free of seasonings. If you're free of something, guys, it means you don't have that. So you might be free of intelligence, which means you're just dumb. Or you're free of disease, which means you no longer have the disease that you once had. Seasonings include, as I said, spices and also herbs, which come from plants.
And, of course, you're not going to see a lot of these things in Cantonese pantries. A pantry is kind of like a separate room in which you store ingredients and utensils and things like that.
Little closet.
Indeed. My grandmother had one, but it was just, a small little closet next to the kitchen. But in any case here, yes. On the other hand, though, we do have some kinds of seasonings here. We've got ginger, and we've got garlic, and we've also got scallions.
Scallions.
They are liberally used to enhance the flavor of the ingredients. Okay, so yes, they are liberally used. Liberally here just means they are used quite a bit. They don't really hold back. Liberal is opposite from conservative. So if you use these things conservatively, you don't really use a lot of them. But liberally here means you use a lot of them. So they use a lot of scallions and ginger and garlic. So you can expect those flavors to be quite prominent in Cantonese cooking.
Yeah, earlier we talked about sparingly. That's more like conservatively. And so here's the opposite, liberally, used quite a bit. Scallions are like green onions. We call them frequently, we just call them green onions in America. But they're very tasty. They're often used in Chinese cooking. Even here in Taiwan, we see a lot of that. And if you enhance something, you make it better. You don't change it a lot, but it's a little bit better. Do you cook much, Tom, at home?
Don't have time. Not much time.
Oh, not much time. Yeah, a lot of the time you spend cooking Chinese food is spent in preparing the vegetables and the meat. You have to do a lot of chopping. I've noticed I have to spend a lot of time cutting things up.
Yeah, basically you can't really have any kind of full-time job if you want to cook for yourself. You're going to be spending a lot of time preparing all this stuff.
No, I cook at home, but I cook a lot of American food. But I do some Chinese food. But I just have to make sure I have enough time to chop everything. If you are stir-frying, you need very small-sized pieces of food so that you don't have some pieces that aren't cooked and some pieces that are overcooked. So this is kind of what they use: garlic, ginger, scallions, and that is supposed to enhance or make the flavor of the ingredients stand out.
Exactly. So you want the original ingredients there to stand out. You want the flavors to be like they were to begin with. And this is a culinary approach. Your approach is how you do something, what your overall plan is. So this approach releases the natural flavors that people have come to love about Cantonese cuisine. So it releases those flavors. It doesn't try to hide them.
Yeah.
If you release something, you simply allow it to go. You let it escape. So you let the food do the talking for itself, and you don't try to hide it with all these fancy spices and seasonings and weird styles of cooking and stuff like that. And so it releases those natural flavors, and of course people are used to that, so they come to love this about Cantonese cuisine. They come to expect it, and they won't have it any other way. Otherwise, it's not Cantonese cooking.
So here are some of the popular dishes most of us are familiar with or have tasted or tried. Shumai has a little pleated, open-topped part of its dumpling. It's a dumpling. They usually put either pork or shrimp inside. If something's pleated, think of some clothes that you have. Actually, I have something on that has pleats. And it's just small folds that they put into the dough. Or I was just going to say a Chinese word here. In Chinese, you guys call it skin, but we call it dough. And if you've ever been to places that make dumplings here, like I was going to say Chinese again, those little dumplings that are steamed that have like a soup texture inside, those are delicious, like Din Tai Fung. That's not speaking Chinese because that's the name of the restaurant. You can watch those people who make the dumplings. They move their fingers quite quickly to make pleats. But in the shumai, it's actually open at the top, and it's stuffed with delicious pork and shrimp. Now, what's a hargao?
Hargao, I guess. I think that means some kind of shrimp or something. But in this case, we're using prawns, which I think technically are not shrimp, but they're very similar. To me, prawns are just big shrimp, basically. So what a hargao is a translucent dumpling which contains 2 whole prawns. If something is translucent, it lets light through a little bit, okay? It lets light through, and you can't really see what's on the other side, but you know light is coming through. If light goes through something like glass, that's transparent. The light is going through, and you can see the thing on the other side. Translucent, the light gets through, but you can't really see the form of something. But I guess it doesn't matter here because it's going to end up in your tummy anyway. And yes, indeed, you get those 2 whole prawns, and these are synonymous with Cantonese cuisine. Basically, if something is synonymous with something, it means the same thing. It is the same thing. When you think of Cantonese cuisine, one of the first things you think of is hargao.
Yeah, I don't think I've had one of these. Have you?
Not that I know of, or I've had it, but I did not know I was eating it at the time. Because I'm having trouble enough trying to learn Mandarin, and now I'm expected to learn Cantonese for these different dishes. I don't know all the
names. But I have a lot of my Taiwanese friends love dim sum, and they go to these Cantonese restaurants quite frequently on the weekend. Now, let's move along. We've got some pineapple buns. That sounds delicious. And a clay pot rice. They cook the rice in a clay pot, which gives it a different flavor. And these are also considered to be beloved fare at Cantonese restaurants. If something's beloved or beloved, You can say that word either way. It just means really loved a lot. Oh, adored, you could say. And fare, you typically see this word and you think of it as being the money that you pay when you get on the bus or when you have to put money on your what's the easy card? I was trying to think of the English name. Tom and I usually use the Chinese for these words. It can be the money that you use for public transportation, or maybe even the money you pay to your cab driver when you take a cab. But it's also a word that is defined as being a range of food, especially a particular type of cuisine. For example, French fare or Mexican fare. Here we're talking about Cantonese fare. But here are just some of the dishes that are really enjoyed by people who appreciate Cantonese cuisine.
Yeah, well, since you brought up the other definition of this word fare here, money that you pay to use public transportation or to ride in a taxi or on a bus. Also, if you're on a highway, like a freeway, you don't pay a fare, you pay a toll, T-O-L-L. They used to have toll stations on the freeways here in Taiwan, but now you pay your toll electronically. So remember, if you're using a public highway, driving your own vehicle and you have to pay some money, that is a toll and not the fare. The fare, of course, somebody else is doing the driving. But here the meaning is food, and we're talking about Cantonese fare, Cantonese cuisine, Cantonese luxury cooking or whatever. What's the word? Exquisite cooking or whatever. Gourmet cooking, gourmet, that's the word I'm looking for.
Or eating delicacies. I think those two dishes that I mentioned at the beginning of the program that kind of make me sick, the dog paws on a dog, or the monkey brain, I think those are considered to be delicacies, which means they're really expensive, but I'm not sure I'd ever want to eat those, to be honest.
Well, we might want to be fair here.
F-A-I-R, fair.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm sure a lot of people in Hong Kong or Canton say, we do not eat monkey brains and dog food or dog
dog paws,
Yeah, we don't eat that every day. In fact, that's kind of rare. They're probably going to say that.
You just see those in movies, you silly foreigners.
It could be a stereotype indeed, but I'm sure somewhere there is somebody who eats those things. But in any case here, yes, these are all examples of things in beloved Cantonese fare, and it goes without saying. You don't have to mention anything. It's very obvious. People around the world will continue to take delight in these and other culinary favorites from Guangdong. So yes, indeed, they've established themselves in restaurants all over the world, in Chinatowns everywhere. They're not going to go away anytime soon.
Well, that was one of my biggest disappointments when I moved to New York City. I went down to Chinatown. I'd already been living in Taiwan as a missionary. When I went home, of course, I was looking for my food, my Chinese food in Taiwan that I loved. So I went down to Chinatown and I could not find my pork chop dish anywhere. I was just going to say Chinese again.
You'd have to go out to Flushing for that.
Then I had to go to Queens, and I found out that that's where all the Taiwanese folks live. So if you ever go to New York City, don't go to Chinatown for some good Taiwanese cooking. Go out to Queens because that's where they live.
It is. But we're talking about Cantonese cooking in today's program. So, indeed, find a Cantonese restaurant near you if we have whetted your appetite. That's all from us today. Thank you for joining us, and please enjoy your dinner this evening. I bet a lot of you are going to have Cantonese food tonight. I am myself. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.